In this video, I'm going to give you a demonstration of how to model a frame for your cart. So to start with, it's really important now. It's kind of scribbly because this is how I started. I just started with a sketch. So just think about what you want the frame to look like. There's some things you want to consider. One is overall length. Remember, we're trying to keep the overall length of the vehicle between 55 and 60 inches. So I just said 57. That gives me a little bit to play with. If I have to stretch it out, that's fine. Overall width should be 40. So that's going to be with the tires on it. So I said the widest this frame I'm going to make is 28. I'm going to make it narrower at the front. I'm going to widen it out where the seat is. And I'm going to have it it won't be flat. So you'll have this part of the frame will be where the person, their legs are, and the controls, the steering will be here. The motor will sit up here, the seat will be in this pocket. By doing this too, also I'm going to create a way to sort of protect the rider a little bit more with some side tubes. The rear axle would be here. Remember, when you put the tires on, you want this thing to sit level. So that's kind of why I have this step in here as well. I just put some basic concept dimensions. None of these are firm. Every single one of these dimensions could change. And this design isn't a great design. Please don't copy this, but it's just something for us to work on. I can do some examples of the modeling and assembling part, and that's really what this is about. It's not about, don't copy this. This frame is kind of a mess. Okay, so just be warned. So that's what I had. That's kind of what it's going to end up looking like, so you can get an idea here. So a couple things, let's just start by modeling. Let's just model some tubes, first of all, just to knock out the cobwebs. I'm going to start. So now where do you start? Keep in mind, you cannot form this thing out of one long piece of tubing. It's going to have to be broken down into separate manufacturable pieces. No more. Typically, I like to do 2 bends per tube, 3 at the most. Just too difficult because the way the tubing moves when you're bending it is too difficult to put more than 2 or 3 bends in a piece of tubing and keep control over the tubing and keep it in the same plane, keep your lengths correct, and so forth. So I'm going to think about a starting point. So for example, I'm going to start up here, and the first thing I'm going to do is, let's make that thicker. First thing I'm going to do is just bend this piece of tubing right here. It's going to be 18 inches wide. I'm not sure how long to make it. I'll just come up with something. It'll be easy. Remember, this is parametric. I can change the dimensions at any time. So I'll just start with that piece of tubing right there. And that's going to be this flat piece, again, where the person's legs are going to be. Remember, we're limited to our our bends. We can't bend anything tighter than 3 inches. So don't try to make anything tighter. It's impossible, no matter what kind of equipment you have, to bend something much tighter than that. So 3 or 3.5 are really good tight bends for the tubing. So I'll just start with a sketch here. And I'm going to do, now please build your models, everything around the mid plane. You'll thank me when you go to assemble the parts. So make sure you know exactly where the mid plane is on everything. Make your life so much easier down the road. And so I said this would be 18 inches wide. And I want to center that on the origin. Oops, center that. My machine is a little slow, I think. On the origin there. Lengthwise, I'm going to start out with 36 inches. Again, it's easily edited. If I change my mind, I think that's reasonable for, again, based at this. Now I have the sketch sitting here, I'm looking at it. I don't have that luxury of or you don't have the luxury of looking at my sketch. Let's see, now we're going to bend this tubing, so you want to put those fillets on there. Let's use the 3.5 radius. So we're not going to have square corners on this. Everything needs to be bent. I'll finish that sketch. Now I need another sketch that shows the cross section of the tube. And so you need a plane to sketch on. So if you go to Features, Reference Geometry, click on Plane, and if you click on the end point right there, try it again, end point right there, and then the actual sketch itself, it'll create a plane that's perpendicular to your sketch, and that's what we want to see. And we'll sketch on that plane, Control 8 to swing it around so you're looking directly at it. Get right on the center there, and remember our tube is hollow, so don't draw it as solid tubes, draw it as hollow tubes. Dimensionally, I'm making this frame out of big tubing. You're not going to be using 2-inch tubing. You're going to be using something different. And let's say it's 1.75 ID. Again, don't use these dimensions. It's just an example. Finish the sketch, and you'll see that I have now my cross section, and I have the path, and go to Features, and we can't extrude this because it's going to go around a corner there, so we have to sweep it. 2 inputs. One is the cross section, which the software knows. It's the last sketch I did. It knows that's the cross section. And then this is highlighted blue, so click on the path. It'll sweep it. And there's my first piece of tubing. I'm going to hide that plane. So remember, that's this piece of tubing right here. So that's what I'll start with. The next part, which is going to be tricky, is going to be these pieces right here. And they're each going to be a little bit different too. So it's going to be in 2 different planes. It's also going to have a notch on it where it meets this cradle for the engine. You can't see that because it's underneath this tube right here. So that's going to be a little bit trickier. So let's start a new part. So I'll start a sketch. And again, a sketch around your mid plane. Know exactly where the center of this part is. And I'm just going to rough it out first, and I'll come back and put dimensions on it. Okay. Now I'm going to make this piece here. Now I'm just ballparking it. I don't know what this is going to end up being. Again, parametrics, you can change this at any time. So I'll make that in 12, this in 18. I'm going to make this 7, and I'm going to center that around the origin. So that's going to be 3.5. And then don't forget to put your bends on it. Now, I have 7 inches here. The radius that I choose, it can't be, if I add up those 2 radii, they cannot be more than 7. It's impossible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this up and use a 3-inch radius. I don't like to use a lot of 3-inch radii. They're difficult to bend without crushing the tubing, but I need that to get this to fit the space that I have. So there is my path. Everything is constrained. Let's see, features. I'm going to put a plane on the end of this. Again, click on the end and click on the path. Sketch on there, Control 8. Same cross section. Excuse me. And again, my tubing I'm using is larger than yours. So 2 for the OD, 1.75 for the ID. Finish the sketch. And now I need to sweep it, go to features, swept boss base. The cross section is already selected, otherwise you just have to select it, and then the path. And I've got that too. I'm going to hide that plane for right now. And again, that's this bend here. I don't care which side. Let's just choose a side. We'll figure it out. Guess I never saved these, did I? Let me save these parts. I'm just going to make up some numbers right now, but follow my instructions I've given you in terms of naming your parts, right? Make sure that they always have a part number. These names are terrible, but just go along with it. Okay, I'm going to start a new assembly. I'm just going to build. Think about if you're really building this thing physically, how are you going to do that? I'm going to start with that tube right there. I'll lay it down. Eventually I'll get, there we go. So I'll start like that. Remember, that's the front of the cart. Your feet would be up here. And now I need to add that other tube that I have. And let's see, keep going. The way I have it designed, it would be like this. I guess it doesn't really matter as long as you know. That doesn't really matter. We can, because again, it's parametric. We can change the dimensions at any time that we want. So let's think about mating this. So I think I'll start with I'll do that end of the tube there. End of the tube there. Say OK. And now I'll just click on that surface of that tube, and that puts them together. Let's see what we have right now. So that looks pretty good, except now the challenge here is, remember, I have this angle that I want. I want this to go up and also go at an angle out to the side. So I have to decide what that's going to be. Now, I don't know what that angle is at this point. Again, I'm designing this as I go. Need some sort of a reference point. So what we need to do is let's look at this part. So I'm going to go back and open up that part. And remember, that's the short leg of that tube that I have attached there. So that short leg, and that's one of the reasons I made those two different lengths, so I'll know where I am. Let's look at our planes that we have. We've got, I'm going to turn that on, got that plane, and I have that one. I have that one. I don't think I'll need that, but I'm just going to turn them on for now. If your planes aren't showing up, go up here to the eyeball, click on that. You have to open this up and make sure planes, view planes, and also view axes, make sure those are turned on. That's the default is for those to be turned off. So what I want to do is have an angled plane here that would let me mate to that plane. Now, it's really going to be off of this plane. In order to create an angled plane, you need an axis. So the easiest way to create an axis is with a piece of tubing is you just click on the tubing, the outside or inside, and that'll create an axis for you. So I've got that. So I don't need this. I'm going to turn that off for now. I don't think I'm going to need this. Turn that off as well. So let's go. So now see what I have is this front plane and that axis. What I want to do is create a plane that uses this as a baseline but rotates it about the axis. So if you go up here and click on plane, for the first reference, I'm going to click on that plane. The second reference, I would click on the axis. Now the software knows something's up here, so it's trying to make it perpendicular, but I don't want that. I want it at an angle. So click on the angled one, and then you're going to have to decide on an angle. Let's try like 30 degrees. See what that does. What about 40 degrees? I don't know. I'm gonna just go with 35. Just have a feeling about it. I'm going to let me grab on. If you grab on those little, shoot, not that. I want to move the whole plane. I want to stretch it out a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see where that plane is. Okay, so I have that plane. Let me turn this one off. Now let's go back to our little assembly that we started. Oops, I didn't get there. There we go. Now my plane is not showing up. Make sure on your assembly that you have rebuild, see if that helps. Okay, let's see. So make sure when you do this, because if the eyeball is turned off, these are all going to be gray. So first thing, turn the eyeball. That's kind of a weird control. So I'm going to turn on view planes and turn on axes and see what we got. Now it's not showing that one. Just give it a minute. Sometimes you have to cycle through. Oh, sorry, that is the plane. I just don't have the planes on for this one. Okay, so let's go to this tube, which I called YouTube. And let's see what we got. How about that guy? So let's turn on that right plane right there. So that's that mid plane. And I need that plane to be over here. So let's just take this plane and offset it. We know that that was 18 wide, so make it 9. You'll see it show up over there. I'm going to turn this guy off. All right, hopefully you can see what we have here. See if I can make that one a little bit bigger. All right, so we have this vertical plane here on this tube here. And then I have this angled plane on that one. So what happens if we mate those two planes? So if I plane 2, plane 1, it turns that. And that's what I'm looking for. Now, see, the idea here again is that it would open up for the seat and also it'll be going up at the same time if you look from the side. So now what if I said, oh, I don't like that angle? It's super easy to go back to this part. And here was my plane 2. If you right click, edit feature, all you got to do is type in the new number. If you decide you want it to be 40, type in 40. Back to your assembly. Say yes to update. And you'll see what happened is it'll rotate it. So it rotated the 40 now. So as we go. So any of these things are editable. If I decide I want to make this tube shorter, open up the file, change that. So this is definitely it's a process, and you can certainly, if we didn't have to worry about actually manufacturing this thing, we could just sweep the whole thing and not worry about it. But ultimately what we're looking for, I'm going to change this back to 35. I do like that 35. Ultimately what we're looking for is to create detailed part drawings of each of these pieces that we're going to manufacture. So we're going to need these detailed drawings anyway. So this kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Okay, we're going back to 35. So I need to do the same thing on the other side, but now it's going to be opposite, so I can't use the same drawing. I have to make a new part to create that, and I'll do the same exact thing for that process, and I'll just keep building, and I'll continue that in the next video.